We have all had the forbidden thought. All these Mario enemies are fun and all, but what would they taste like? Are any of them potentially edible, and maybe even delicious? How could you prepare them the best way? Well, today we will look into all of that and more, as we look at some of the most delicious Mario enemies in the entire franchise. Now we will start off with the creme de la creme, the Goomba, the basic Mario enemy that has been seen in every title and since the very beginning. Now overall they don't look too appetizing, but according to the developers, they were based on shiitake mushrooms, so maybe they have a similar taste. We can see loads of enemies that are based on mushrooms in the games, so I think if you were to take one down and open it up, then it wouldn't be filled with meat like a normal animal, but it's just a straight up mushroom, but a lot bigger. Now in the real world, shiitake mushrooms are actually used for a number of things, and I have used it in the kitchen before as well. In general, these mushrooms are great for making a soup stock or as a meat alternative because it absorbs sauce really well. So any dish where shiitake mushroom is used, we could also replace it with a Goomba, allowing the flavors of this strange enemy to enhance our soups or make for a great bite in a dish. Think of a good stir fry or maybe ramen. Although I will say, personally, I do not like shiitake mushrooms that much. I find them a bit tough. So overall, I would rather use it in a soup than an actual dish where it's a meat replacement of sorts. Now the next enemy we will look at is the Hoppo, a relatively new one because it was first seen in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now overall these enemies are harmless and they look really cute, but as you can clearly see, these hippo-like enemies do have a lot of meat on them. Now personally I've never had hippo, but apparently it's pretty great from what I could find online. In the real world, these animals have a firm, mild and deep red meat, described as a cross between premium beef and pork, with sweet notes and rich marbling. Marbling is intermuscular fat running through the meat, which makes it more succulent and less chewy. Now, despite its exotic nature, this is not lean meat at all, and also not particularly gamey, as in it tastes like wild meat. And in a lot of places where they do actually eat hippos, they often turn them into stews, steak, or something known as biltong, which is basically a form of beef jerky. So I think that any of these dishes would be a good fit for a hoppo. Although personally, I would most likely go for steak, because the fact that it has rich marbling makes it really good for a steak. As someone who's had A5 Wagyu before, which is some of the best beef you will find on the planet and is only really made in Japan, I know that great marbling running through a steak makes it a million times better, and literally turns the texture into something that melts in your mouth. You don't even have to chew, while flavor explodes out of the meat. So I would actually be very excited to eat a hoppo, and my preferred way would most likely be steak. But of course, the many lakes and oceans of the Super Mario world also hold a treasure trove of edible enemies that could be really good. One example is the urchin. While not really eaten in the West, in Japan and New Zealand, urchin is something that is quite common actually. Now, I have never tried urchin myself, but it's said that when it's fresh, it has a rich, buttery, melt-in-your-mouth texture with a mildly sweet, deeply savory, and fresh ocean brine flavor. Which in many ways is a bit of a contradicting description, but I understand where they're coming from. As somebody who loves mussels and other seafood, I could actually really be into this. But there's one thing that I've seen about urchin that doesn't make me too excited. Overall, I'm not really into oysters, mostly because of the snot-like texture that the animal has. And it seems like urchins also have a similar texture to oysters. But apparently the texture is also very similar to something like custard. So I don't know if I would really be into that. But I'm certainly curious about it, and I bet that the urchin seen in Super Mario could provide an insane amount of meat. A lot more than those seen in real life. Now, so far we've only talked about meat and fish, But obviously, you can also find vegetables in the Super Mario world. Although, weirdly enough, a lot of these are also alive and sentient. Now, one that really looked interesting to me was the Magmado. As you can see, these are not the friendliest of enemies, and they look incredibly angry. Meanwhile, their inside is filled with boiling hot tomato sauce, which we could actually do a lot with. It would be great as the base of a pasta sauce, where we add all kinds of herbs, spices, other vegetables, and probably a bit of meat or meat alternatives. And depending on how you prepare it, it could even make for a great party trick. Now, I bet that most of you who are watching have heard or seen lava cake before. It's basically a brownie filled with molten chocolate that will burst open as soon as you touch it with any cutlery. However, you could do a similar thing with these Magmados. You could put it on top of pasta together with other ingredients and pop it as soon as you serve it at the table, making the sauce go all over the ingredients on the plate. There are even some other dishes that function in a similar way, like that one omelette dish from Japan, which also flows open as soon as you cut into it. Doing something similar to that with Magmado when serving a pasta dish could actually be really cool, and I bet that the boiling hot tomato sauce found on the inside is beyond delicious. But it might need a little bit of salt and pepper and some other spices. However, I can also imagine that it would be incredibly difficult to work with this kind of produce, because they are boiling hot on the inside, not friendly at all, and pop open upon death. So it must be a headache and a half. And you also get quite a lot of sauce from this really big tomato. So you better enjoy tomato or pasta if you're gonna use this enemy in the kitchen. Now, the next enemy that I want to look at that would be great for cooking, in my opinion, is the eels that are seen in Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Galaxy. These massive sea snakes could yield a lot of meat. Now, around the globe, eating eel isn't super popular. Overall, as far as I know, there are only 3 places where eel is eaten a lot. In Britain, where jellied eel is really big, even though it looks horrendous and I would never want to try it. Here in the Netherlands, where smoking eel is a big thing, like a really big thing. And Japan, where eel, also known as unagi, is often eaten from the grill with a sweet soy sauce on it. Now, if I were to prepare eel, I would do it either in the traditional Dutch way, aka smoked eel, which is delicious in my opinion, or I would go with what the Japanese are doing with unagi. So we are either saucing and grilling these beautiful pieces of eel, these fatty pieces of fish, because eel is actually very fatty, which is great to be honest, or we're smoking it and either eating it straight up by hand or putting it on a cracker. Now, personally, I absolutely love eel. It tastes amazing, although I can't eat that much of it because it is quite heavy on the stomach. So I would probably go with smoked eel, because that's kind of what I grew up with. But one thing I would never do with it is create jellied eels, because I don't know what they're doing up there in the UK, but it looks horrifying. Now on to the next foe that could make for a scrumptious meal, the Cheep Cheep. And this one would actually be very easy to prepare. Like any fish, you could cook this in a variety of ways, and it could taste amazing. For example, we catch ourselves a Cheep Cheep, put it out of its misery, clean it up, and get all the stuff on the inside out, and fill it with lemon and herbs, and then throw it in the oven for a low and slow bake. This would already be fantastic, but we can do much more with it. We could also cut off some of its fillets and pan fry it with a bit of butter. Or maybe we take these fillets and then cover them in an egg wash, and then roll them through some breadcrumbs to create fish and chips. Although you would normally go for a beer batter when making fish and chips, so either we're going for breadcrumbs or a beer batter. Meanwhile, the bones and other leftovers could be used to make a fish stock for soup, or maybe even a sauce that could be paired with the fish and its fillets. So really, when it comes to the Cheep Cheep, there are an infinite amount of things we could do with it. And I would love to try one of these behemoths. But there's one other enemy that I would be even more excited to sink my teeth into. Ah, the blooper, another fish that you will find in almost every body of water seen in the Super Mario franchise. Now, I have to admit, I absolutely love squid. I've been a big fan of it for many years. And even though this is a bit of a strange creature to eat, I really love the bizarre texture, and it's especially nice when paired with a bit of garlic. So I would love to eat an entire blooper for lunch. And we saw some massive ones in the Mario games as well that could also be great for cooking. Just think of Gooper Blooper from Super Mario Sunshine. That would be enough meat to fuel me for months. And worst case scenario, if Gooper Blooper truly doesn't want to die, I can just rip off one of his arms, which would be a perfect meal for at least 12 people. Because look at the amount of meat I got here. Look at how long that arm is. And we could do a number of things with it. We can just grill it. We can fry it, similar to calamari, you know, like squid rings. We could fill it. And we can even eat it raw. The possibilities are endless. And we could even combine it with some other enemies that we discussed in this video already, like the Magmado. Really, out of all the enemies on this list, this is the one that I would eat without a doubt. Because as a massive squid lover, you don't have to threaten me with a good time. But be sure to let me know in the comments down below what you think of my list of edible Mario enemies, and which ones you would discard and which ones you would add. Aside from that, I have a bunch of other videos here on the channel that you could check out right now. And don't forget, I stream here on YouTube every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and if you subscribe, you won't miss any videos. Well, that should be the case at least.